So before we get started, let's pull up a document that I had downloaded to create a mortgage calculator. So before you start something, what you always want to do is look up some documentation on what you are creating so that you create these apps or projects correctly with the proper information. So I downloaded this simple Wikipedia mortgage calculator, and it just breaks down how a mortgage calculator works. So if we scroll down, we can see here we got monthly payment formula. And this is the formula that we are going to use as we create our mortgage calculator. Okay. So C will equal the monthly payment. So C will equal monthly payment. R will equal interest rate. N will equal number of monthly payments. P will equal principal. Okay. You can see this calculation here. We're going to be using that calculation, and then we're going to use some other calculations when we start to dive into our code. We're going to do the total interest paid, and then we're going to do total paid with interest in our calculation. And then we're going to create a whole statement that outputs once we've taken in information. So we're going to ask questions such as how much you're putting down, how much does the house cost, what's the interest rate, and what's the term in terms of like 15-year or a 30-year fixed. Okay, so let's move into coding, and then we can start this project. Okay, so let's launch VS Code. Again, we're going to start in the terminal. We're going to navigate our way through. So let's go to my Dropbox folder, projects, coding, projects once again. And then I'm going to locate my Nate and Tech folder. So press tab, Nate and Tech. And then I'm going to type in code period to launch VS Code. All right, so we're going to start off with the blank file. Let's make a new file. Actually, this time, let's actually make our file on the command line. So if we just type in code mortgage underscore calculator.py, then it'll create a new file. The file is not saved yet, as you can tell by this period. And then we can just hit save, and then we have a new file created right here. So that's how you can make a file in the terminal line if you want. All right, so moving on, as I had explained earlier, we pulled up the PDF to show how to calculate a mortgage in many different ways, and we're going to implement those things in different ways. So the way we're going to create this mortgage calculator is we're going to make a class. So we're going to do object-oriented programming in this lesson to show how we could use that to make a mortgage calculator, and then reuse a lot of different methods / functions that we create in this class. So let's start. Okay, so I'm going to just title the top of my document mortgage calculator because it's something I like to do. And by the way, this theme that I'm using today is called Groovebox. All right, so we're going to make a class. So let's create a class month. I'm going to call this class monthly payment formula. All right. And then I'm going to start a couple functions, initialize self, create another function, repr underscore self. Okay. And then we're going to make another one for the calculation of the mortgage. And we're going to call that mortgage calculation. Then one more, we're going to call that total interest paid. And then got one last one. I lied to you. And then total paid with interest. All right. So it's just going to spit out a couple things when we finalize our calculation so we get extra information. Okay. So next thing I want to explain is these methods up here actually look kind of different if you notice. When you initialize classes, Python provides what you call magic methods, And magic methods are defined by double underscores. So these are actually two underscores, and it's called dunder methods also. So this first one is like initializing our variables that we're going to use throughout our methods that we have in our class. And then the second one is a different print statements that we could use to pull from these methods that we're using in the class. So that's what those do. To simplify, I can go into it a lot more, but I want to keep this brief and short. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to start this with this initialize method, and we're going to add a couple variables. So we're going to go self dot down underscore payment equals self dot interest rate equals self dot mortgage underscore term for the duration self dot principal. Okay. And we want each of these variables to take in information because we're going to ask these questions. So we want these to take an input, but these are also going to be numbers. So we have to convert strings into numbers too. So we have to think ahead. All right. So with that said, I know that my first one, such as a down payment, I'm going to just make that an integer, and then it's going to take an input. And then the question is going to be with the F string, how much are you putting down? Question mark. And then the answer right there. Next one, I actually want to use a float because we're using percentages. I'm going to go input, F string, and then I'm going to say, what's the interest rate? Okay. And then the next one, integer once again, input, F string. What is the duration of the mortgage? Okay. And the last one is integer. Take the input, F string. What is the cost of the home? All right. So we got all of our questions, and we got all of our variables defined also. And then I want to also define two more variables because we also have to, within our calculation, we need the percentage or convert. We need to be able to convert our percentage properly. So we're going to name another variable, self dot percent, which equals 100, and then self dot month in years equals 12. The reason I'm making these variables capitalized is because they're not going to change. They're final, and I don't want them at any point changing. So this just signifies that, hey, this never changes. It always stays 100. This always stays 12, so that nobody edits this in the future. Okay, so next thing, what we're going to do is we're going to move down here to our mortgage calculation function, and we're going to start setting that up. All right. So we're going to go self dot D equals self dot down payment, and then self dot R equals self dot interest, lowercase, interest rate, and then that's going to be divided by percent, and then month in years. Okay. And then next we're going to do self dot n equals ABS self dot mortgage term times month in years, and then next we're going to do self dot p equals self dot principal, and then now we're going to do our calculation. Okay, so if you guys remember in the PDF, this was the calculation. So it's self dot c equals self dot r multiplied self dot p minus self dot d divided by 1 minus 1 plus self dot r to the power of self dot n, and that's our calculation. And then we're going to return self dot c. So that is our calculation. And we're going to do another calculation for the total interest paid. So we're going to go self dot I self dot c times self dot n divided by months in year, all right, minus self dot p minus APS self dot p, and then that's it. We're going to print, all right, interest. Let's see, interest. Actually, we're going to come back to this. We're not going to do that part yet. Okay, so let's do the next calculation. And we're going to go self dot I equals self dot c times self dot n divided by months in year minus self dot p. All right, so we got all those together. All right, so let's move up here to the first function that we had set up. And this is where our actual output will show. It will show in like a cordial form, such as like, hey, with this amount that you put down, this is what you're going to get, and your monthly payment is going to be this with this type of interest rate, blah blah blah. So that's what we're going to make here. Okay, but we're going to set up the basics first, because we're going to have a 30-year, 15-year, and a 10-year, and a custom as conditionals. So if we input for the let's see, for the mortgage term, right, we created a mortgage term question up here, right? So if we input that, we get to decide how many years we're going to choose. So with that being said, we need to make sure that we create conditional statements for that. Okay. You guys might see some difference going on up here. I just pre-entered these amounts so that I don't have to keep entering every time I run my code. But I have the final saved right here, commented out. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to create these conditionals. So we're going to go if self dot mortgage term is equal to 30, all right, we're going to return string self dot c. Okay, and self dot c is the calculation we did right here. So we're returning this all the way up. We're taking this and pulling it all the way up here now. Okay, because this is where we're going to actually output everything. And under this function, only strings can be outputted through this function. So I have to convert the result into a string. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm passing this output into a string conversion. All right, so let's move on to the next one. I'm simply going to just duplicate this 4 times. And then I'm going to say elif. And this is going to be a 15, 10, elif. And then we're going to have a else. And then get rid of that. And there we go. Okay, so that's our basic layout. Okay, so I ran some tests to run this code. One thing that I had messed up on was making sure that I properly entered my variables as I filled out my code. So here in this location, just make sure it'd just be simple to just copy this, paste it down here, paste it here, here, and here. If you remember, I did not have self before month and years, and then I had it not spelled right. I had months and years. So just make sure to copy and paste it throughout to just fix those things so that your code will run properly. So one other thing that I failed to mention too was at the bottom, we actually need to execute our code. So if you see down here, This is our variable or functions that we're calling plus the class. So if you just type it out in this manner, this will properly execute what you had built. Okay, so let's now start adding in all the details. Okay, so I know this is my main result that I want to have, but I'm going to get rid of this for now. Okay, and so I'm going to simply type it out what we're going to do, and you guys can follow along. So we're going to return f string with a curly brace and then convert to a float, self dot down divided by principal, and then comma, period, 0%, if I can find it, and then close the curly brace, down payment of $, and then we're going to go curly brace, self dot down payment, colon, comma, period, to F to format, close the curly brace, period, a $, curly brace, self dot principal, colon, dot period to F, close the curly brace, monthly mortgage on a curly brace, self dot mortgage underscore term, close the curly brace, year fixed with a self dot interest rate, colon, 2F, close the curly brace, percentage APR is, APR is $, curly brace, self dot C, comma, period, to F, close the curly brace, and we're done. I know that was a lot, but maybe I'll just copy this in the description. So check in the description below, and you guys can copy this also, so you don't have to type all this out. I know it's a lot, and I was following along myself because I already have it typed out. To be clear, I'm not just spitting this all out of my head. All right, so let's just give this a quick test to make sure this is in working order. So again, I already have these things entered. If you want to use this here and enter just to have fun, you could do that. But for myself, I don't want to keep re-entering everything. So it's going to immediately output this statement here if I have it right. There's no errors. Okay, so we do got some errors. So I got to see what's going on here. Object attribute down. So what is going on? So I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to fix it, and then we're going to come back. Okay, so we solved it. Simply, I just had some things misspelled because I was typing a lot of things. I had down payment. I just had down, and then I had this one also misspelled. So I just corrected those, and then everything was in working order. So if I run the code, as you guys can see, this is actually what's happening. With a 10% down payment of $10,000, a $100,000 monthly mortgage on a 30-year fixed with a 6.91% APR is $593.34 a month. Is what I should add at the end of that. A month. So if I rerun that, now we will have a month. Okay, so with a 10% down payment of $10,000, a $100,000 monthly mortgage on a 30-year fix with a 6.91% APR is $593 a month. Okay, this sounds kind of weird. I'm not gonna fix that right now, but yeah, you guys can fix that however you like, but I would fix that too. I'm gonna come to that later. But as you guys can see, this is how everything is playing out, and we can repeat, rinse and repeat for the rest of everything that we have here too. Okay, so I'm gonna go in and just add the rest here that I have, And then the next one. So I'm just copying and pasting from my notes so we don't have to, you guys don't have to see me type everything out again. And then make sure you have proper indentation because that block exists under the if statement. So make sure proper indentation again. Okay. So let's test this out with a 15 year. So like I run a 15 and let's run it. Okay. So cool. So now I'm running it on a 15 year. Okay. 804. And we see the amount go up. Let's run it on a 10 year. Right. This amount went up. 10 year, 6 adjustable rate mortgage actually. Okay. And then we're going to change it to a 5. So let's see what happens on a 5. Okay. So this should be the else block. All right. So it went way up. 5 year fixed. That's pretty high. That's crazy. 5 year mortgage. Wow. Okay. So we got everything in working order. So we created this mortgage calculator. And then now I can just get rid of this since I'm not testing anymore. And then I can uncomment this. And then I can run it again. Right. So now it's going to ask us questions. Okay. So what kind of house? See, how much are you putting down? So I'm putting down $25,000, let's say. All right. What is the current interest rate? I think the last time I checked is 6.91%. It's really high right now. What is the duration of the mortgage? Let's try doing a 30-year fixed. What is the cost of the home? Let's say 325, 1, 2, 3, 6 figures, and run that. Cool. With the 8% down payment, right? It even calculates the percentage. With the 8% down payment of $25,000, a $325,000 monthly mortgage on a 30-year fix with a 6.91% APR is $19,077.81 a month. Cool. So we created a simple mortgage calculator. And with this base line of code, we can go in and add in more things. So one thing will be cool as a small project is APIs, So let's say that we wanted to get current interest rates so that they're constantly updated every single day. So every single day we get an updated interest rate, and that interest rate will automatically run in here. So we could use something called APIs, right? Where it goes out and gets information from a website, which it hits an API and then brings that back to you, and it runs it through this code to give you more accurate results. So you don't have to sit here and Google, oh, hey, what's the interest rate today? What's the interest rate tomorrow? So that's a cool add-on that you could do to this project if you wanted to. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I enjoyed it. It was a fun project to do when I initially did it. I wanted to show you guys how to create one also. And then you can approve upon these things. Remember, we talked about refactoring. All right.